Ladies and gentlemen, hello. My name is Pascal Lottaz. I'm an associate professor at Kyoto University and where I study neutrality in international relations. And I would like to thank the organizers of this event today. And I sincerely apologize for not being able with you in real time. At least in video, I can maybe talk a little bit about the implications of the neutrality proposal and for the defense policy of Australia that you've got, and that's what I would like to focus on to discuss with you a little bit this this idea you've got. And I must say it's a wonderful idea, and it's a very straightforward idea that Australia should naturally not be aligned or not be in a military alliance with any other state, but care about its own military and security defense while not isolating itself from the rest of the world. And I think the IPAN proposal for an alternative self-defense policy makes this pretty clear. One of the things, the pillars of the proposal is, of course, to have a non-nuclear and armed neutrality. The proposal correctly talks about this as being um, a standard for many neutral countries. In fact, especially the permanent neutral countries in Europe of Switzerland or Austria. Those are the kind of standard models for an armed neutrality with a military. In the case of Australia, would of course be also with a large and very important navy. And by large, I mean always. And military capabilities need to be adjusted to the actual threat level a state faces. And Australia, with its very beneficial geopolitical position, really wouldn't need to be militarized to the teeth, right? Because I must explain here that neutrality as a security policy is an alternative, of course, to the alliance system, and forming an alliance rests on the logic that on the logic of the big stick and big carrot. What do I mean with that is that by pooling resources, states increase their threat level to the outside. And in the most benign version, they remain with the threat and they never go outside. They never attack other countries. Unfortunately, what we have seen in the recent past is that NATO and other alliance members of the West have repeatedly used their military capabilities in order to fight wars abroad outside their immediate military territory, the territory that they claim to be defending. We just need to think about the Iraq war, or we need to think about the way that NATO states implemented the no-fly zone in Libya to see that these military alliances very easily can become offensive alliances in order to subdue outside rivals. And of course, in the Iraq war, this was not a NATO war per se, but it was a war of the coalition of the willing of states closely related to this military alliance. And this is something that easily happens. It easily happens that if you're part of a formal military alliance, that you're sucked in to causes that have nothing to do with the primary purpose of the military alliance. In international relations, we call that phenomenon entrapment. It is easy for states to get entrapped in the military affairs of others if they are closely integrated. Now, in the case of Australia, what you're proposing at IPAN is to create a defense policy that by default excludes such military posturing. So this idea of the big stick, right, of being able to threaten everybody else, and you propose to exchange it with what I call the small stick and the small carrot. So by the way, the big carrot would be that if you play along, then you get all the benefits from being a friend of the alliance, and that can come with a lot of very lucrative economic deals as well. But then, if you use the other strategy, the neutrality strategy, as you're proposing here, then the suggestion is that, okay, me as a neutral state that defends itself at home alone without coalition partners. What what we are doing is we are not threatening any kind of potential adversary with great pain and with the ability to strike them at home. What we are proposing is that if the adversary tries to come to us and actually tries to invade us, we still maintain the capacity to inflict considerable hurt on the other one, right? So if an attack happens, we will defend ourselves, but we will defend ourselves alone, and we will maintain the capacity we need in order to inflict substantial hurt on the other one. Will this be enough to overwhelm all and any force that anyone can ever threaten on you? No, it won't. But let's remember, also in alliances, it is not impossible to defeat alliances. Just look at how the First World War worked out. This was a war of alliances, and all alliance partners on all sides got dragged into it and suffered horribly. So alliances are not a guarantor for remaining unharmed. And so neutrality too is a strategy in order then to create incentives to the outside. It's an incentive for outside forces not to attack in order not to get harmed. And the small carrot, of course, is the offer by neutral states that you can have economic interactions with us, with just us, and you can get a lot of benefits from us as long as you don't attack us, right? So we play ball as far as we can, but if you try to breach our red lines, which is our own territory, then we will maintain military capabilities, and that's the whole idea of the non-nuclear armed neutrality. The non-nuclear part is very important as well, of course, because it also assures that Australia stays in line with the non-proliferation treaty and with the basic standards of the modern world, where we don't want to see further proliferation of nuclear arms. Another pillar of the IPAN proposal is a non-alignment as a step towards neutrality. Non-alignment and neutrality are not the same concepts, but they are closely related. I mean, it is generally accepted that permanently neutral countries cannot be parts of military alliances, although this detail is never spelled out anywhere in the Hague Conventions or anywhere detailed in writing, but it is accepted standard that neutrals should not be military allies. So, but by creating a foreign policy that calls itself non-aligned, this would definitely be a step towards then achieving also neutrality during times of war of others, right? Because I would like to stress this one here. Neutrality doesn't mean that you remain untouched by conflict. I think it is very important to recognize that conflicts of other states always create pressure in the system and create pressures that also affect the neutral state. So in this little graphic here that I created, I usually explain this as follows: we've got neutral state A, we've got belligerent one, and we've got belligerent two, and the mutual relationship between the two belligerents is one of war, unfortunately. But the fact that both belligerents maintain a working relationship with neutral A, so B1 has a working relationship, B2 has a working relationship, and that relationship is one of peace. These states are at peace with each other. That's very essential, right? This constellation creates the problem that, of course, both B1 and B2 will try to put pressure on neutral A to be more neutral on their side, right? To help them more, because they will accuse the other one of being evil and whatnot, and try to increase pressure. And the neutral always needs to make it clear to its two partners that it is neutral toward the primary conflict. It's not neutral toward them, it is neutral toward the conflict. And it will maintain a working relationship with both. And neutrals always have the hardest time in the world to make belligerents understand that the beef that these two belligerents have with each other is between them. It's not the neutrals' problem. Um, but this is very essential, and what I call a conflict constellation creates pressure points. It creates very severe pressure points on the neutral, and this is where the neutral needs to defend its position. And what I mean by defend is usually defend politically, defend militarily as well. And fun fact, if a neutral actually takes military measures against the incursions on its territory by a belligerent power, in order to prevent that from happening, that's under international law, not even regarded as an act of war. It is it's a necessary thing to do for the neutral in order to maintain its neutrality. If a neutral does not fend off illegal incursions of its territory, and in the case of Australia, that would also include its sea lanes of communication. If it does not fend that off, then the other belligerent is actually legally allowed to take military measures against that inability, and that's then how neutrals very easily get sucked into conflicts, right? So they're a minimum capacity to maintain to defend the neutrality of the neutral is actually needed. And just maybe to in closing, let me also point out that since 2017, the United Nations recognizes the 12th of December as the Day of Neutrality. The United Nations used to be quite hostile toward neutrality, especially when it was founded back in 45, 46, 47. The UN, there was a long debate at the UN whether neutrals are even compatible with UN principles, which is of course the self-defense uh, component of the UN, or the collective self-defense component. And the debate, though, over the last 80 years shifted quite a bit. And today, the UN recognizes the importance of neutrals. And just to point this out, the UN defines neutrality as the legal status arising from the abstention of a state from all participation in war between other states, the maintenance of an attitude of impartiality toward the belligerents, and the recognition by the belligerents of this abstention and impartiality. Um, the UN also recognizes the importance of neutrality as aimed at promoting the use of preventive diplomacy. So, for you in IPAN, something to look at is this terminology of preventive diplomacy, how you think that Australian neutrality and the new defense posture could boost the ability of Australia's foreign service to engage in preventive diplomacy in order to make sure that, or in order to help quell conflicts before they even boil up. There are a lot of problems with this, of course, because the structural impact that the neutrals can have on foreign conflicts always depend on the willingness of the belligerent parties to actually let that happen. And what we're seeing in Ukraine is a situation in which one of the two sides even proactively try to undermine the neutrality of Ukraine, and successfully undermine the neutrality of Ukraine. And I'm not speaking about the Russians. I'm speaking about NATO countries, which really worked overtime for many years to make sure that that neutrality is nothing that Ukraine would ever have to promise, or that neutrality actually went away. They had a neutrality clause on their constitution until 2014, but that was then revoked, which is really a pity, and which is one of the reasons why this proxy or implementation war is currently taking place on the territory of Ukraine. But for Australia, I strongly believe that what we are learning from the situation is that having a foreign policy of neutrality, or a principle of neutrality or non-alignment, whatever you call it, it doesn't matter that much. As long as there is as long as there's a dedication in the political circles to maintain a certain degree of autonomy and actually defend their right not to be sucked in to third-party wars. Just a very quick point on how this can be achieved. There are many different ways of doing this. The simplest and most straightforward way would for you to convince the political leadership to actually start using that rhetoric. If you start using the rhetoric, even if just one of the Australian leaders starts saying we want to be neutral, that would already have an impact. It wouldn't yet create a clear situation, but it would have an impact, and it can get things rolling. A next stage would be a policy of non-alignment, a white paper of the Ministry of Defense, of the Foreign Office, that says Australia strives for achieving neutrality, something like that. And one of the strongest forms you can get would be, of course, creating a law about it, or even a constitutional amendment or a constitutional article saying Australian foreign policy is one of neutrality and spelling it out and then actually having it through the political process. Um, included and ingrained in your state setup. Some people then will argue, oh, but that has no force under international law. It needs to be recognized by international law. That is nonsense. If you declare it, then it will become a reality because other states will notice it, and international law just war is outlawed under international law, and it still happens. Some people even argue that's why neutrality is actually also a thing of the past, but that's not true. War remains a reality, and so does neutrality. If you declare it, you already do everything you can, and on a higher level, you might then even try to get a guarantee, not guarantees, but recognition by states, by third parties that they recognize your neutrality, either at the UN, as the Turkmens are doing, or at bilaterally with states. You demand some form of recognition, or please send us a letter saying that you take note of our declaration of neutrality. And with this said, those are the steps that can be taken. There are various forms. And just one more fun fact: even if you don't declare neutrality under international law, if war between third states breaks out and Australia doesn't take part in it, it automatically is categorized as a neutral, and the laws of neutrality start applying. This is also important to know. So you can also pressure your politicians by saying, like, look, we just don't want you to join all the wars, and if you don't do so, then the laws of neutrality apply, and we demand as a pressure group that you live up to it. And my time is over. I leave you with this. If you have any questions, please write me an email. I'm happy to be in touch with all of you. Thank you very much.